You're listening to the Recovered Life Show, the show that helps people in recovery live their best recovered lives. And here is your host, Damon Frank.
And welcome back to the Recovered Life Show. Damon Frank here for episode 108, Wednesday, May 11th, 2022. How you doing, Kristina Dennis?
I'm doing great, Damon Frank. Now that we know what day it is for sure. Yep. Happy Wednesday to everybody.
A little flub there, and I apologize about that. We're off of our regular routine for the Recovered Life Show. We skipped a day. We took a day off because I requested it, actually. You have to know how to do that self-care, Kristina.
Yes, important. It's so important. I respect that you expressed your need, and I really believe that we all are healing from perfectionism. So good for you.
Well, not me, Kristina. I already am perfect. I'm definitely healing from perfectionism. You know that. So I'd like to welcome everybody to episode 108, Wednesday, May 11th, 2022. We've got a really great show in store for you. First, got to mention here, Kristina, before you jump in here and let everybody know about the Recovered Life Show. I would like to say that we do have a lot of programming that has been added, even though we did skip a live show day. We've got tons of Recovered Life discussions. So guys, if you're listening to this live on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, or any place that we have it live or the replay, please jump in to the podcast because, man, I got to tell you, tons of great content there.
So good. I'm not going to get that conversation anywhere else. But before we do start the show, I want to let everybody know that it's being brought to you by Recovered Life contributors and people like you. Please follow, share, like, and leave us a comment so we can keep bringing these really good discussions to you. Also, you can visit info.recoveredlife.us, where you can leave a donation that helps us to continue and help others, and join the network, which is completely free. That's info.recoveredlife.us.
Guys, I would like to thank so much for everybody who has contributed to the Recovered Life Show. Look, it's so great because we can dump the money right back in to helping people that are in recovery. And this is all about, like you said, helping people live their best recovered life. Kristina, amazing show that we've got. 2 jam-packed segments here about what people are actually talking about in recovery. So the first one I wanted to kind of introduce a little bit because we had a whole conversation on our Recovered Life discussions and people were bringing up the issue that they were having with relapse dreams.
Yes.
And there were so many questions about what are relapse dreams? What are they all about? Am I in trouble if I have a relapse dream? So I thought this would be a great segment to kind of dive into this because relapse dreams happen. Almost everybody that I know that is a recovered alcoholic or has been recovering from drug abuse has had a relapse dream. I mean, I would say a large majority of people that I know have had them.
I agree. I don't think I've ever met somebody that when you share, oh, I had a relapse dream, I dreamt that I relapsed, they don't say, me too. Me too. It is part of the deal, for sure. And one of the things that was brought up in that discussion, which I think is important to share about, was this idea that it can shake the ground that you are on about whether or not you're doing the right thing in your sobriety. Like, why did it show up? What is it saying? What is happening? Why am I remembering this? I must not be doing a really good job in my sobriety if it's showing up. And I don't think that's true personally. For me, I think it's part of the deal. And that it is not necessarily an indication that your recovery program is in trouble. It is a good reminder, though, about how it feels. And that can be something that shakes you to the core.
Well, I want to talk about that because you put an important point is like a lot of people interpret a relapse dream is that there's something going on and that their sobriety is not great, right?
Right.
Now, I have 2 thoughts about this because I am somebody who has had a lot of relapse dreams in different lengths of sobriety. And I'm going to share one later in the segment here that I had when I had almost 20 years of sobriety. So, so it happens, right? Is it always an indicator that you're doing things incorrectly? I'd say no.
Yeah, me too.
I'd say no. Feel like we always say, and look, and I know that there's therapists that listen to the show and they're like going, "Oh, don't say feelings aren't facts."
Yes.
Right? Because they are facts sometimes. Sometimes feelings are facts, and they
Right.
are indicators of what's going on, especially repetitive feelings, right? Repetitive feelings,
Yes.
like if you're always feeling angry, you're always feeling sad, or you're always feeling confused, that might be a sign actually that something's trying to emerge, right? As a coach,
Yes.
I'd say that all the time, man. If you're reliving stuff all the time, that's something you want to look into.
Right.
Relapse dreams are interesting though, Christina, and I want to ask your opinion on this.
Go.
Relapse dreams, I do believe that sometimes it's a threshold, it's a gateway that you walk through, that
Okay.
you're leaving a certain type of life or
Okay.
ideas behind, and it's addiction's way neurologically of
Uh-huh.
coming back into your life. I've found
Ooh.
that to be the case.
Ooh, I have to think about that for a few minutes because that is really an interesting, opinion. I I think that you are probably onto something there. What I was told the first time I had it, relapse dream, was that it was indicating to me that I was feeling out of control with something in my life.
Mm.
It was a warning sign to look back and try to see where I am maybe in unrest, where I am not peaceful about an issue. And I think that that is true. That when I've had a relapse dream, it has been more of a warning and a sign that says reinforce your sobriety. Look at some of the things that you're doing and see what in your daily life needs to be addressed. But I
Well,
don't
when
think
we're
it has.
talking about neuro patterns, though, like
Mhm.
let's dive into that real quick before we move
Okay.
on. Neuro patterns. Let's talk about these neuro patterns because we talk about this a lot. Like when I first got sober, no one talked about neuro patterns in the early
Yes.
90s. Like no one did, right? But what was happening is when I got sober is that a lot of neuro patterns are being broken.
So
Ideas
true.
that I had entrenched about this. So that's what I want to really dive into you about. It's like, okay, these get broken early sobriety, people have these dreams. They've got
Right.
really horrible relapse dreams that seem very, very real.
Oh, they're awful. I mean, I have to say they've been awful. My experience with relapse dreams has been that I don't necessarily see myself drinking, but I see after the effort that I'm going through and the questioning about, well, who do I have to tell? What does that feel like? I don't want to stand up and be a newcomer again. Oh my God, like this is awful. And do I tell my husband or do I keep it a secret? I've known people that continue to drink in a 12-step group, took sobriety chips every year and didn't feel like they could discuss or say that they had relapsed. And there's a lot of pressure in long-term sobriety that's already a given that you keep, that it's easier for you. And I have to say the obsession has been lifted for many years at a time, but I have had relapse dream even in my 25th year. We just celebrated my birthday on Friday. Thank you everyone for the well wishes and the thought, but it's not necessarily a given. Sobriety isn't a given.
Yes.
And so I would feel and have felt through that awful feeling that I had a secret. And it reminded me of what it felt like and feels like when you're in active addiction.
Well,
It's
the stakes
terrible.
are high, right? Like, so look,
Mhm.
you're talking about the stakes are high. Like I'm with you because I think a lot of people in early sobriety have dreams that they drank, and it is relapse dreams because I think about like when you get in even 10 to 15 days, you get a week and you
Yes.
start to realize it's like I might be able to make a go of this, right? Like
Right.
working with new people now, it's great because you start to relive it again. You're like, wow, okay, they got 7 days. They might be able to get 2 weeks. They might be able to get 30 days, right? And
Right.
so as you get more invested in your recovery, I notice sometimes that these relapse dreams come up with people.
Mm.
And it is, and I think one of the ways that, and I have been upset with relapse dreams before
Mhm.
because they've been so real. And I know a lot of people have just been shaken by them, like
Yes.
literally traumatized. Like, and I say, you know what? Look at it as a good thing because you're so upset about it because it's something of value to you.
True.
Like, it's identifying that it's something of value. And I think in early recovery, a lot of people are just trying this on. They're
Right.
trying it on like a
I know I
jacket.
did. Yep, I
Right?
did.
Yeah, I'm going to try this for a week. I think these people are kooky. Why do they keep laughing? This isn't a funny thing, right?
Right.
And there's so much going through your head that you're trying to process. I think it's normal that people have relapse dreams, especially in early recovery.
Of course, of course. And I love that you said people are trying it on, because that was absolutely my experience. And that's why when we coach people, in our program, and they're not 100% sure, whether this deal is for them, I'm okay with that. It's more, I mean, it is a great experiment. And I feel like a lot of people catch recovery once they've been around it for a little while. They get the physical sobriety, which allows them to have access to their cognitive function, and they realize they can live without it, but it's still there. And so I'm all right with people who say, I'm not sure I'm an alcoholic. I remember when I first got sober, asking questions like, oh, you mean you're not going to toast on your wedding? You're not going to do this? It didn't mean that I was going to go out and relapse. It meant that I couldn't conceptualize what it would feel like to not drink forever, and having a few years under my belt allowed me to have, information that it was possible. And then I got a little deeper. So I'm all right with people who maybe don't really feel inside that they're an alcoholic when they first start.
I'm going to double down on that, Kristina. I actually think it's a lost art in sobriety. Most of the time, especially if I'm working with people, the first thing that I do is we really go over for a couple of days.
Okay.
Why do you think you're an alcoholic? Right?
Good.
Why do you think you're an alcoholic? Because I think that this is glossed over, and this, and we've talked with people that are in recovery centers, and I know you do interventions.
Yes.
And people just assume that people will come into a 12-step program, or they'll get a coach, or they'll go to a rehab, and they already are convinced that they're an alcoholic. I find that that's not the case. And I'm also going to say too, I'm going to go out in the line, and I don't want anybody listening to this to say that I'm telling you that you're not an alcoholic. So don't interpret what I'm going to say here in that way. But I have worked with people at the very beginning and identified that they're not alcoholics.
Really?
They were going through a trauma, that they had addiction issues, but they might not necessarily, there were other things going on with them. Yeah, I have. And I'm going to be honest. And I think there was much more emphasis, Kristina, earlier on in the past, let's say, when working with alcoholics, especially new people coming in, is to really go over, what is alcoholism?
Yes.
Why do you think you have it?
Yes.
Let's dig into this a little bit before we just call you an alcoholic
and
go down some sort of treatment plan.
Right. Well, and if you are one of those people, perhaps, I think I've shared this on this show many times. When I really examined my relationship with the questions of the outpatient treatment, I really did concede inside myself, wow, I do not have a healthy relationship with alcohol. I do not, have some of the power to be able to stop once I start. But I agree with you. There are people that have drank alcoholically that are not necessarily alcoholics. But any period of sobriety is an opportunity to grow, to connect to the feelings, to examine, and just to even start dreaming about what a life. It gives you that opportunity. So, in everybody, I think in this entire world, benefits from a period of sobriety.
Yes. And I think why I hesitated to say this is because what we know about alcoholism, and I think you have to be careful about having this conversation with people. So look, I'm not a trained therapist, and this is not what I do, right? I'm not a therapist, and either are you. So obviously every case is different, but I do believe, that going over the fundamentals of alcoholism at the very, very beginning. And this is where I also have noticed causes relapse dreams. People that kind of know, yes, deep down inside they're an alcoholic, but don't really want to say, hey, I'm an alcoholic.
Right.
Which is a dangerous thing too. We know that if you don't identify as an alcoholic and you are an alcoholic, pretty much I would bet money on it that you're going to relapse within the first 90 days. Pretty
True.
much. If
True.
you can't get there, because that the honesty part of that, the honesty part of that is the key, I think, to walk through the door. But the reason why I say it's dangerous to sometimes ask that question, and you have to be around people that I think have very good sobriety and kind of know what they're doing with this, is that alcoholism will tell you that you don't have alcoholism.
True.
So you need somebody that can really be truthful with you to say, well, man, you drink these last 5 times, you can't control it. Seems like alcoholism to me. What else
True.
do you think it could be?
Well,
Right?
and yeah, and it has to do with the entire world misunderstanding that term, and frankly, I feel like that, the focus on that, and you and I both came from 12-step groups where that was one of the foundations. And if people can get sober without using that label and that feels better to them, okay. But I feel like there's some power in making that decision and realizing I can never drink again because I don't drink normally. That really helps take that off the table. Because when I first started drinking, I behaved alcoholically from the first day. I did. And it was actually so shaming to me. The way that I drank, I was embarrassed and I was humiliated because I wouldn't be able to stop. It always had to go to blackout or, vomiting or whatever that I did. I had so much shame about it. So for me, it was a huge relief, but I don't want people to get hung up on that label, and
Absolutely.
And I'm all right with people not calling themselves an alcoholic. It's saying that they choose to live a sober life. The more that we have discussions like this and we take the shame out of it, the easier it will be for people to access help.
Kristina, and this is why we were talking about relapse. This is why we're talking about whether people are alcoholics and whether they're not, because we know as coaches and also people that have long-term sobriety and have done the deal, that when you walk through that door to make a decision, it's like, wow, I'm an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
I got to tell you, when I deep down inside knew I was an alcoholic, but when I finally got to the point where I walked through that door, it was shocking to me.
Right.
And people that weren't alcoholics that knew me were like, you're shocked? And but this is the thing that only alcoholics can understand. I truly was shocked.
Yes. Yes.
I truly was. It was such an awakening to me. This is when I see a lot of the relapse dreams come up, because now I'm realizing, and I remember that's when my first relapse dreams started to happen.
Really?
Chemically, things are different. I don't have alcohol in my system anymore. You're detoxing, you're going through this, then you start to walk through this door to say, man, I really might have a problem. Oh man, this is something that if I go back, I'm going to be in trouble.
Right.
Then all of a sudden I have a stake in it psychologically. And then these are when the dreams start to come up.
Yes. Yes. I just love what you're sharing, because that awakening, there's duality in it. There's the shock, and then there's also the comfort of knowing that there is a place for us, that other people drink like we drink, and it isn't a moral issue. It doesn't make me a bad person. And I have gotten a lot of relief, and I have gotten a lot of comfort, and developed really a family that gave me enough time to start to learn about myself. And so for me, it's a true gift, and I want that gift for everyone. But I'm open enough to say that maybe alcohol isn't that way for you.
Well, I have to, and this is why we're talking about these dreams, Kristina. And I wanted to share a situation that I had.
Please.
I think I was 17, 18 years sober when this happened, that I'd had something happen in my life that was not alcohol related.
Mm-hmm.
I was not as much on my game as I should have been with my own personal program. Right. And I was vulnerable. We talk about this, like places where we're vulnerable.
Yes.
In times in our life in recovery, right? And that is sometimes a combination of people, places, and things. It's sometimes us not necessarily preparing ourselves for the world, to deal with the world spiritually, right?
Right.
And what happened with me is there was this opening, and I had a craving out of nowhere. And I'm telling you, like 10, 15, like not nothing. Boom, it hit me very, very hard. I had a relapse dream where I'd overslept on a Saturday. Kristina, it was so bad
Uh-oh.
And I walked out and my family members came in and I'm looking under the couch and I'm upset and I'm like crying and I'm like, and they're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I drank. Where's the bottle? I'm trying to find the bottle.
Ooh.
And they're like, you've been asleep the whole time. Like we've been, up all morning. It was so real. And
Wow.
I got to tell you, we talk about trauma and I laugh off some millennial trauma sometimes, which isn't a good thing. Kristina, I do. It's like, okay, like you didn't have my kind of latte at Starbucks. I had
Sure.
trauma. I'm not talking about like it seriously shook me down.
Wow.
It took me 2 to 3 days just to not be rattled by it. That's how bad it was. So I have total empathy. If you're listening to this, I get it. And that was at 17, 18 years.
Yes.
Where did that come from? I asked, I think for me, it was a sign actually at that time. It's like, hey, you need to pay attention to certain things. But I think what it did, the lesson that I got to it after I stopped being rattled by it was
Sure.
it's like, you know what? Sobriety is important to you. This has
Yes.
massive value. And that's what I got out of it. I was like, you know what? I need to pay more attention because this is one of the things in my life that has the most amount of value to me.
I think it has the most amount of value to me. I don't even get to play in the game if I partake in alcoholic beverages. I don't even get to have the life that I want. I'm not able to do that. And I love that you shared about it because yes, rattled is to our core has happened to me. And it has been an indication that I am a true alcoholic through and through. And I need to address something that's going on. And there's been times where it's just shown up. And so I think that the most important thought or takeaway from this conversation is to say, talk about it, tell somebody, understand that you're still safe and know that you're not alone because most people have relapse dreams.
And if there's a lesson there, I would just add to this, Kristina, if there is a lesson there, like there was for me, pay more attention, be more spiritually fit at that moment in my life. And I needed that at a moment in my life. And what I needed at that point was more community. And then I went out and got that. I learned that lesson, right? I paid attention. And this is the thing I think with recovery. It's like, I don't really curse if I have relapse dreams. I'm not going to say I have them all the time. I rarely have them. Okay. But when I do, I actually look at this as to say, okay, look, if I'm upset about this, if I'm rattled, it means that this is important and I need to pay attention to what's there. And if there is nothing there, I need to just move on.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that I want people to hear if they're listening to this. If you Googled this, right, or on YouTube and you found this on YouTube and you're like, man, I'm having these, sometimes don't beat yourself up for them.
Not at all.
Because I've said I must be doing something wrong. That if I'm having these.
Right. It's dreams are, and then we could have a whole entire show about interpretation of dreams. And I know people who have grown into that science and started paying attention to it. But we, the dream is something that I believe our subconscious is bringing forward to us to pay attention. And there's some of that stuff just needs to be dealt with. And like you said, move on.
Well, we'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Definitely in the comments. Please comment about your relapse dream if you've had one, and what it meant to you. What did you learn? Was there a takeaway from it? We're going to do more content on this because it's something that everybody. We were talking, Kristina, because it is something that happens in early sobriety a lot.
For sure.
So, we were both saying it's like, wow, a lot of people. And then thinking back, I'm saying. Definitely. Like it was a huge deal in my life, right? It was a huge deal. So I think the whole idea of community and just communicating with people that you've had these is going to really, really help.
Huge, huge. We're not alone. You're not alone.
Well, Kristina, this has been an amazing segment. I need everybody to hold on because we have an even a better segment coming up next with this article that you found that we're going to dive into. But I wanted to kind of just do a little quick shout out to the Recovered Life community out there. If you're not a member, definitely go to info.recoveredlife.us, become a member. We're doing all kinds of cool stuff, Kristina. We've got all kinds of exclusive content, even free coaching that's on this, that we're giving and advice and things for people who are getting through milestones in their sobriety or trying to get into some sort of recovery plan, set up a recovery plan for their life. This is an amazing place to be. Also, you have access to people like Kristina Dennis, people like myself, and there's a lot of free goodies on there. So definitely go to info.recoveredlife.us. You can connect with both of us if you go to that site there. And we can't wait to interact with you. We know that recovery is about community. And if you want to live your best recovered life, you have to have a great community. So we've built one and we're inviting you to join. So go to info.recoveredlife.us. That's info.recoveredlife.us. Kristina, after the quick little break here, we're going to dive into another great segment. So we need everybody to hold on. We'll be back in just a few seconds.
You're listening to the Recovered Life Show.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying. So glad to have you. Before we go into our second segment, which is about narcissism versus complex PTSD, I want to remind you that this segment is being brought to you by Recovered Life contributors like myself and people like you. Please like, share, follow, leave us a comment, keep us, going in the right direction. Also, info.recoveredlife.us, which Damon just mentioned, is the place that you want to go to join the network. It's completely free, and you can leave a donation if you want to help us to continue to help others. I am so glad that we're going to be talking about this, Damon. Are you interested?
I am. This was when you sent me this, you were talking to, this segment here is about narcissism, which is, I think, the Instagram word of the week. I always say it's like everybody now is a narcissist.
Yes.
If the person at the deli doesn't give you the right turkey slice, they're a narcissist, right? And I think we've overused this term so much, Kristina, that people are confused about it. And I know in recovery, look, a lot of people, we talk about this, a lot of people in a recovery, and recovery isn't their only thing that's going on. They might have a personality disorder, bipolar disorder. They might have anxiety disorder, depression. There's other things that are going on. And I think one of the great things about recovery today, if you're getting sober in 2022, or you're sober in 2022, I should say, is that people are much more accepting. And I think people are understanding that there's a lot going on with people, and addiction is one piece of the puzzle, right? It's one piece for you to live your best life. It's not the only piece sometimes. And narcissism comes up all the time. So we wanted to kind of dive into this because you're big in the family unit. That's what you do. You talk about the family unit. And typically, if there is chaos in the family unit, there's probably a narcissist roaming around, right?
True. And this article from the Mayo Clinic really explains narcissism as a personality disorder. And I love that you said that it gets thrown around a lot, because it does. And narcissist personality disorder is rare. And so only about 1% of the population would actually receive this diagnosis. But if you suspect it, I want you to read the article, because it really gives us a good idea of what the behaviors are that a true narcissist would. Now, one of the things that I wanted to talk about is how alcoholism can be masked as a narcissist. When I start working with people, we'll talk about what a narcissist is, if they're in a codependent relationship with a narcissist. And sometimes our behaviors as addicts help us to present as if we're narcissistic. And I think that the world that isn't dealing with alcoholism, let's say a loved one or a partner, can easily look at these and say, well, that person is a narcissist. I am married to an alcoholic narcissist. And more often, 99 out of 100, it's not narcissism. It's not a true narcissistic personality disorder. It's actually complex PTSD. And so I don't believe that we are, explaining, how do I say this? I don't believe that we should jump to the conclusion that the alcoholic is a narcissist. And I don't believe that we should jump to the conclusion that we're in a relationship with a narcissist. In my 25 years, I've only coached 2 people who were married to true narcissists. And so most of the time it's complex PTSD that's presenting itself as a narcissism.
Yeah. And I want to put this out. Kristina and I are not doctors, and we're not
No.
diagnosing anyone in your life, right? That might be narcissistic, but we have seen this a lot, right? And there are narcissistic traits, and you bring up complex PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, right? Stress syndrome or disorder. One of the things that's interesting about this is that we know that PTSD has patterns, right?
Yes.
We know when we talk about this in the neuro room all the time, Kristina, that there's patterns to it. So many times what we'll come across as narcissism is actually just a protection pattern.
It sure is. It sure is. Even some of the latest research has shown us in the neuro room, we discussed it, that shaming a narcissist isn't going to actually help them get better. And I think that we attach that. Actually, you need to keep a narcissist accountable to learn how to be empathetic. And that looks like setting healthy boundaries and being, willing to remain in somebody's life. Now, I am the first person that says you got to get out of the way and take care of yourself. But I also know that true narcissists, and the article goes on to explain that they think there are 3 components. It is relationship with childhood caregiver. In other words, not getting your needs met or not getting them addressed, that there may be biology attached to it, and that it can be part of your actual DNA, but they don't have that necessarily set. I think there will be one day where we're sitting down and, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, that we can see this person will lean toward narcissism. I've seen it in my own son's genetic makeup with autism. So I think we're getting closer, but narcissism can be, narcissistic-like tendencies can be a self-protective mode for people. And for me, as an alcoholic, an active alcoholic, I think I presented very much like a narcissist.
Well, I think that the thing is that we know, and just so everybody knows that is listening on the podcast here, we brought up on the screen here for the live show. We're going to put a link in the podcast to the Mayo Clinic article that Kristina is referring to, and we're going to kind of go over some aspects of this. But I want to throw in this: we know that there is an obsession of self.
Yes.
And obsession of self-thinking with alcoholism, Kristina. We know this. Like, we've known this since the 20s and 30s. I mean, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous has a whole area on that, just the obsession of self. So the obsession of self looks like narcissism in a lot of ways. But when you start to unpack that, it doesn't play out like that.
True.
As there's healing there. And I think also too, it's misunderstood. And, look, and I'm not going to say that I've never met a narcissistic person. I have. And I've been, look, if you've ever truly been around a narcissist, they are crazy makers, right?
Sure.
They're absolutely crazy. And if you're in that family system with them or friend system with them, or they have any kind of hierarchy system that they're involved in, absolutely craziness, right? But this is not the same thing as self-obsession, alcoholic self-obsession. It's different, right? And it presents differently. I think it presents the same a lot of the times at first, because there's such craziness around alcoholics and drug addicts protecting their addiction.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So you see the chaos in that, but that's not really narcissistic personality disorder.
No, it is not. And that's one of the things that I want people to think about as they read the article and start believing or looking at and taking inventory on their relationships. True narcissism, we're not sure, I think, how to really explain that. There's a lot of evidence. There's a lot of research going on around this, but alcoholism is different. Complex PTSD is different. And it kind of points to the source of where the personality started going wrong, where they became self-obsessed. When we drink alcoholism, those of us who have a substance abuse disorder, we become completely different people. I mean, it's Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, right? That's described in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And with a true narcissist, they are that person through and through. And the brutality of being in a relationship with a narcissist is very bad to be around. And so if you were raised by a true narcissist, you are going to have codependency tendencies. You're going to use alcohol as a way to cope. You're going to do anything to try to protect your nervous system. Have you ever been, Damon, around somebody and had the worst feeling come over you and then, try to understand why? I know as a codependent, I ignored those messages. So I'm curious from a male standpoint.
And I think one of the things too is, and I think one of the things that people need to be aware of, especially if they're in a 12-step group or if they're in a group dynamic, could be group therapy. It could be anything where there's peer-to-peer support, right?
Yes.
That you have to be careful, I think, a lot of the times of narcissists. And I know a lot of the times that men are pegged as narcissists, right? And I think women sometimes are pegged as borderlines, which is very, if you read, it's very similar in the case, right? So, and I've found that not to be the case. I found that there's people that's a scale, I think, right?
Right.
Of narcissism, but they're always in a group dynamic. There will somebody that will have a narcissistic thing. And, reading this Mayo Clinic article, having exaggerated sense of self-importance, right, is one of them. Having a sense of entitlement and require constant excessive admiration, right? Expect to be recognized as superior even without achievements that warrant it, right? Everybody has come across somebody, but usually, typically, these people, I'm going to say the mega narcissists, they really gravitate towards people in recovery. And this is my own personal opinion. And also me having, discussions with therapists about this, asking them what they think about this idea is that narcissistics, people that are true narcissists seek out codependent people.
Of course.
And this is where the group dynamic, I think, becomes very complicated in recovery if you have a narcissist present, because they're there to be a predator many times to people who are wounded and have issues. Maybe they had a parent that's an alcoholic and they have a codependent streak. You see this a lot. The narcissistic person will come in and they'll start wreaking havoc.
Yes. And what I was going to say is that there have been times in the past where I got into a relationship with a narcissist or a narcissist-like person where I had the feeling, my nervous system knew that, something was not right, but I squashed it. And that's my codependency. I abandoned myself in order to be in relationship with somebody else. And because I'm willing to address that in recovery and keep pushing forward, a lot of times I had to disconnect completely. They call it detachment in, our favorite Al-Anon group, or with codependency recovery, we call it detachment. Sometimes you've got to get the hell away and protect yourself.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can disconnect from the narcissist, although they do not like it, and they will up the ante, and protect yourself without making such a drastic change. But if we're not aware that these type of people are out there, or we believe that we deserve, like, this is what true love is. They care about me.
That's the thing,
right? They care enough about me to criticize me. The other thing is there's no explanation and why they chose you other than that they can exploit you. And that's so hard to understand, for a codependent.
Well, I think maybe it is. I think I'm going to jump in here. I think that maybe alcoholics are in a unique position to understand this because, the narcissist, the difference I've seen between people who have PTSD or triggers, right? Or neuro patterns, that's how they react out, is rage. Narcissisms have this rage, right? That's this uncontrollable rage. That's usually a sign that they're a narcissist if they're not getting what they want. But I think one of the common things that we know about narcissism is they're fueled by these interactions, these narcissistic interactions, just as if codependents are fueled by trying to save people, just as alcoholics are fueled by alcohol, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
we do kind of like, and this is where I think alcohol, this is why I think they've said for years, don't date people that you go to rehab with. Don't date people
Right.
your first year in recovery, right? Because and I've seen this in big 12-step groups that I've been a part of, that I've been in kind of quote a leadership position in,
Sure.
where we're, it's a large group, especially narcissistic men coming in and literally being predators, finding people who are weak, or they're down, or they've been hit down, right? They're trying to recover. They're trying to get it and pour it on, and then have absolute rage if the person doesn't respond.
So true.
And having to intervene with those people, like with groups of guys, having to intervene to say, like, you can't hang out here. Like, you need to go find another place, because it's dangerous, right? Because they'll suck everything into the path, right? And I don't know what the solution is for that, for people who are, look, you've said it, Kristina, you've never met an alcoholic that's not a codependent.
Right.
So
True.
we're very primed to enter the path of a narcissist.
Absolutely. And it really, I love having this conversation, because I want people to not self-diagnose as a narcissist. I want them to talk about it, and to talk about, feeling like, wow, somebody really is out there to victimize me. It doesn't mean that you have a victim mentality if somebody victimizes you and you say, ouch. It doesn't mean that you invited that person into your life. And as codependents, we will often take 100% responsibility for the entire interaction, not recognizing that we may be in relationship with a true narcissist or a predator. And so it's so important to have this kind of conversation. We are not 100% responsible for others people's actions and what they do, and talking about it, and having, the rules about, you don't date a newcomer. You let that person grow into somebody that can be part of a relationship with you. It's really important.
Well, look, let's be really blunt about this, Kristina. In reality, I would say a lot of the people, especially in coaching, I mean, you and I, do coaching together. And we know the people that have totally blown up lives.
Yes.
They seeked out the narcissist. They looked for them. They were attracted to that if they were codependent. There's a level of which it's like, I'm going to come in and I'm going to fix that. Or this is what I deserve. I deserve to be treated this way. And it's a very, very strange dynamic. And I think as you get, and you might disagree with this, Kristina, because I know we don't always agree on on all these points, but I think you see it over and over and over again. You start to realize there's some sort of magnetism between people that are very codependent and also in recovery themselves, that come from an alcoholic family unit. It's like, out of a crowd, they will pick the one narcissist.
On purpose, not necessarily consciously, not necessarily consciously.
Yes, not consciously.
But, and that comes from childhood wounding. If you were raised by a narcissistic person and you were told that these behaviors meant that that person loved you, you will believe that when you are young. You will believe that because this person is taking care of you and you have no choice. But if we don't pull out those belief systems and examine them and start working on our confidence, our self-care, and our self-worth, we will continue to find somebody who emulates the relationship that we had with our primary caregiver and try to change them, because that means I have value. I don't want love from somebody who's actually willing to offer it. I want love from the person in the corner who isn't willing to offer it. And then I will be so great and magnificent, and I will convince this person to love me wholeheartedly. And that will mean my parents were wrong and nothing is wrong with me. And it is.
Or I would even say can't offer it. It's not even that they're not willing. They can't offer it. And you see this with PTSD too. It's like, people that have trauma or whatever around certain things, they will attract other people into their lives that it's the worst possible scenario for them. Right. So look, and you and I, we've all done this too.
I've
like,
done
we're
it.
not like, we've all done this. So it's like, we've been down this road and we know what this is like. And working with other people. That's why I so much love this show, Kristina, is because that you and I are able to kind of talk about behind the scenes. We're able to really get real about this.
Right.
And then also talk with our guests about really how are you going to live your best recovered life? And this, if you're hanging around narcissists and you're hanging around people that have massive PTSD, right? And you're trying to get them to give you something that they're unwilling or unable to give you emotionally, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Sure are. And finding out that as adults, we are 100% responsible for loving ourselves and not leaving that job up to somebody else can feel really, really lonely. But as I say to people, once you start giving yourself that love that you are seeking from somebody else and making somebody else responsible, you will have the self-security that you're looking for in other people. And you
absolutely
win.
Will. You will, and you'll win. And the narcissistic people will not have the effect on you that they want. You'll be able to identify it. That's not for me.
Yep.
That's not for me, right? And move on. Kristina, this has been an amazing episode number 108, Wednesday, May 11th, 2022. Before we leave, I just want to mention, guys, head over to recoveredlife.us. A lot of great changes there. We've got some amazing stuff, Kristina, going on in the Recovered Life community. And Kristina and I, in the next couple episodes, are going to have a big announcement for people that listen to the show that really want to take the recovery to the next level. We're working on something right now that I think you're going to love. So hang tight, go to recoveredlife.us, start living your best recovered life. Join a community of like-minded people. Do it now. Recoveredlife.us. That's recoveredlife.us. Episode 108, Kristina, in the can.
All right. Everybody have a beautiful day. Mwah.
Keep the conversation going. Join Recovered Life, a community of like-minded people who are looking to live their best recovered lives. Membership is free, and you can apply at recoveredlife.us.